It's the summer of 2023, in a quiet suburban neighborhood in the Midwest. Think tree-lined streets, perfectly manicured lawns, and houses that all look like they belong in a home and garden magazine. It's the kind of place where people wave to each other from their driveways, kids play soccer in the cul-de-sac, and life just hums along. Or at least that's how it seems on the outside. Let's meet the man at the heart of this story, Jake Calloway. Mid-30s, 6 feet 1 inch, with the kind of physique you'd expect from someone who spends more time at the gym than in front of the TV. He's a high school teacher, teaches history, and lives for those rare moments when his students actually show some interest in his lectures. But despite his solid career and decent paycheck, Jake's life isn't as perfect as it appears. His wife, Emily, is the picture of charm. An event planner, always on the go, juggling wedding schedules, corporate events, and the occasional baby shower. She has a smile that can light up a room, and a heart that seems just as warm. But like everything else in Jake's life, appearances can be deceiving. They've been married for 6 years. Not long enough to be old, but long enough that they've settled into a comfortable routine. A routine that Jake would later realize was more about tolerating each other's presence than genuinely connecting. It's a Tuesday afternoon when Jake's world begins to crack. He's sitting in the living room of their suburban home, sipping on an iced coffee while scrolling through his phone. It's one of those lazy afternoons when nothing seems urgent. Emily is supposed to be at a meeting for the day, so Jake has the house to himself, just how he likes it. That is, until the phone rings. It's an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Jake, it's Adam," says the voice on the other end, his tone a little more serious than Jake is used to. Adam is one of Jake's old college buddies, a guy who always knew how to make any situation feel lighthearted. But today, something's off in his voice. "Hey Adam, what's up? Everything good?" Jake asks, trying to match his friend's tone. "Man, I don't know how to say this, but I think you need to know what's going on with Emily." Jake's stomach tightens. He doesn't know why, but he already knows this is about to go downhill. "What are you talking about?" Adam hesitates for a second. "I saw Emily with someone she shouldn't be with. I think you need to come by the bar tonight. It's better if we talk face to face." Jake's mind races. Emily, at a bar, with someone else? What the hell is going on? Jake begins, but Adam cuts him off. "Just trust me, man. We'll talk when you get here." "I'm sorry." The line goes dead. Jake sits there, stunned, his heart pounding in his chest. It's like his body is on autopilot. He doesn't even remember getting in the car. But somehow, he's at the bar within the hour, a grim sense of dread settling over him the entire way. He parks, takes a deep breath and steps inside, where Adam is waiting. Adam's face is drawn, his usual grin replaced by something more serious. "Jake, you need to sit down," he says, motioning to the empty chair in front of him. Jake's mind is racing, and before he can say a word, Adam pulls out his phone and shows Jake a video. It's not a long clip, just a few seconds. But in those few seconds, Jake's world shatters. Emily, his wife, in a passionate embrace with another man. Jake doesn't even know how to react. His throat tightens, his vision blurs, and for a moment, he wonders if he's imagining this. But no, this is real. Adam's voice cuts through the haze. "I'm sorry, man. I don't know what to tell you. I saw them together last night. I didn't want to keep this from you, not after everything you've been through." Jake feels a rush of anger, confusion, and betrayal all at once. He thought his marriage was solid. Sure, there had been the occasional distance between them, the days when Emily would come home late and barely speak. But he never thought it was anything like this. "Who is he?" Jake manages to choke out. Adam looks guilty, but he doesn't hesitate. "I think it's someone from her work. I didn't get a name, but I saw them getting really close." Jake stares at the video again, unable to tear his eyes away from the image of his wife in someone else's arms. The man she's with looks vaguely familiar, but in his shock, Jake can't place him. Emily's face in the video is one of pure enjoyment. There's no hesitation, no guilt in her expression. Jake's stomach turns as he watches the scene unfold. How long has this been going on? Jake asks, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm not sure, Adam replies, but I think it's been going on for a while. Emily isn't the same lately. She's been acting distant, like she's somewhere else when she's with you. Jake runs his hands through his hair, trying to piece this together. His wife, the woman he trusted, the one he shared his life with, had been carrying on an affair behind his back. And Adam, his friend, was the one to break it to him. He doesn't even know how to feel. Anger? Yes. Betrayal? Definitely. But there's also a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach, like he's been blind to something he should have seen. I don't know what to do, Adam, Jake admits, his voice trembling with emotion. I thought we were happy. I thought we were good. Adam leans back in his chair, looking uncomfortable. Man, I wish I had answers. I really do. But I just thought you should know. Jake nods, though he feels like he's drowning in a sea of confusion. Thanks for telling me. I don't know what comes next. Adam gives him a reassuring look. Take your time. You don't have to make any decisions right now. But just be careful, okay? Jake stares at the video one last time. He can't stop watching Emily and this man, caught in a moment of happiness that wasn't meant for him. He feels like an outsider in his own life. As he walks out of the bar, he feels a storm brewing inside of him. The anger is there, sure, but it's mixed with a strange sense of helplessness. How do you confront the person you've loved and trusted for so long? How do you confront your own broken heart? The drive home feels endless. Each turn of the wheel is like another nail in the coffin of his marriage. When he gets home, Emily is sitting on the couch, casually scrolling through her phone, as if nothing is wrong. The house smells faintly of the perfume she always wears. Jake stands in the doorway, staring at her. She looks up at him, surprised to see him back so early. Jake? What's wrong? She asks, her voice innocent, almost too innocent. He doesn't respond right away. Instead, he walks past her, heading straight to the bedroom, his mind racing. Emily follows him, calling his name, but he doesn't stop. He can't. Not yet. The storm is coming, and Jake isn't sure if he's ready for it. But it's inevitable now. Everything's about to change. Jake walks past Emily without saying a word. Every step feels heavier than the last, as if the weight of his heartbreak is physically pulling him down. He walks into the bedroom, his head spinning, still replaying the video Adam showed him. His mind can't escape the image of Emily and that man, locked in a moment that should have been reserved for him. The door to the bedroom creaks open behind him, and he hears Emily's voice, soft but full of concern. Jake, what's going on? Why are you acting like this? He turns around slowly. Emily stands in the doorway, looking like she's genuinely concerned. Like she has no idea what's really happening. She doesn't know. Does she? She doesn't know that Jake knows. Don't play dumb, Emily. He finally spits out, the anger that's been building inside of him boiling over. I saw the video. You and him. The bar. The secret. The affair. I know everything. The room is silent for a moment, and Jake watches Emily's face as it morphs from confusion to panic. Her eyes widen, and for the first time in what feels like ages, she looks genuinely caught off guard. Jake, she starts, but he cuts her off. Don't. Just don't. He says, his voice shaking with fury. How long, Emily? How long have you been lying to me? How long has this been going on? She stumbles back a few steps, looking lost. Jake sees it. He sees the guilt, the panic, but more than anything, he sees the weight of the truth slowly sinking in. She can't deny it anymore. I didn't want to hurt you, she finally admits, her voice barely a whisper. I never meant for any of this to happen. Jake's jaw tightens. Oh, but it did, didn't it? And now I'm standing here, trying to figure out how to even look at you after everything. You say you didn't want to hurt me, but here we are. The pain in his chest is unbearable. His hands start to tremble, his entire body on edge as if it's preparing to shatter. He loved this woman. He trusted her. And she'd been lying to him for who knows how long. Emily takes a step toward him, her eyes full of tears now. Jake, please. I didn't know what to do. He just made me feel alive again. And you, she falters, shaking her head, you were always so focused on work. So distant. It wasn't like it used to be. Jake feels like the floor is falling out beneath him. He was distant. He was the one who had been busy, trying to make a good life for them both. Trying to keep their future secure. And now Emily's trying to blame him for this? I worked because I cared, Jake says through gritted teeth. I worked because I wanted us to have everything we needed, because I wanted us to be happy. And this, he gestures around the room, his emotions spilling out. This is how you repay me. Emily doesn't say anything for a long moment. Her silence is deafening, like she's trying to come up with something, anything, that could fix this. But there's no fixing this. Not now. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this, Jake says, his voice barely audible as he turns away. Jake, wait, she says, but he doesn't stop. He needs space. He needs to breathe. He's been holding this in for hours, for days, maybe even years, and now it's finally spilling out. It's overwhelming, and he can't process it all at once. Jake grabs his keys from the counter and heads for the door. He knows what he needs to do next, but the thought of confronting Emily about the affair again, of facing the reality of it all, feels suffocating. He slams the door behind him, the sound echoing through the house like a final, painful punctuation. Later that evening, Jake finds himself at a local diner, a quiet spot that's become his go-to when he needs to clear his head. It's late, the kind of late when the streets are quiet and the world feels like it's on pause. He's nursing a cup of coffee, his fingers wrapped around the warm ceramic mug as if it could offer him some semblance of comfort. But there's no comfort tonight. Not anymore. He pulls out his phone and dials Adam. The phone rings a few times before Adam picks up. Jake. Adam's voice is cautious, like he's not sure if he wants to hear what Jake's about to say. Yeah, Jake replies, his voice hoarse. It's done. I confronted her. It's real. She didn't even try to deny it. I'm sorry, man, Adam says softly. I really didn't want to be the one to tell you. I just thought you needed to know. Jake takes a deep breath, trying to steady himself. You were right. I didn't want to believe it, you know? I kept thinking maybe it was a mistake, or maybe I was just overreacting. But no, it's real. Adam is quiet for a moment, probably trying to find the right words. So, what happens now? Jake looks out the diner window, watching the lights blur as cars pass by. He doesn't know what happens now. But he knows one thing for sure. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. I don't know, Jake admits. But I'm not going to let her walk all over me. I'm going to fight for what I deserve. He goes to work, but his mind is somewhere else entirely. Emily's betrayal haunts him in every quiet moment. It's like a constant shadow, always there, lurking just behind him. He can't focus on his lesson plans or the essays he needs to grade. His students notice, of course, the change in him. Jake isn't usually this distracted, this distant. One of his students, Mia, raises her hand during class. Mr. Calloway, are you okay? You seem off today. Jake blinks, taken aback by the question. His first instinct is to brush it off, to tell her he's fine. But he can't. Not today. Not anymore. I'm fine, Mia, he says. But the words don't quite sound convincing, even to himself. She doesn't press. But Jake knows she can tell something's wrong. Mia's smart. She's always been one of the students who notices when things are out of place, even if she doesn't ask about it. By the end of the day, Jake can't stand being in that classroom anymore. He's barely managed to get through the lessons, and his mind keeps drifting back to the one thing he doesn't want to think about. Emily's betrayal. The image of her and that man in the video keeps playing on a loop in his head. But instead of heading straight home, Jake takes a detour. He drives to a place he hasn't been to in a while, his old college campus. The place where he and Emily met, where everything felt fresh and new, where he thought they had the world at their feet. He parks near the quad, staring out at the familiar buildings that used to be full of so many possibilities. Everything feels different now. There's a heavy weight on his chest, like all the air has been sucked out of him. He sits there for a while, just letting the thoughts swirl, trying to make sense of everything. And then, As if on cue, his phone buzzes. It's a message from Emily. "We need to talk." Jake stares at the screen, his finger hovering over the keyboard. What is there to say? What could she possibly say that would make any of this better? Reminder: if you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Jake's phone vibrates again. It's another text from Emily. The words are short, but they hit him like a punch to the gut. "We need to talk." For a brief moment, Jake stares at his phone, his finger hovering over the keyboard. What's there left to say? What could she possibly say to make this right? Could it be an apology? Or maybe an explanation he doesn't even want to hear? But as much as he wants to shut everything down, he knows he needs to face this. He can't run anymore. He can't just avoid the confrontation that's been looming over him like a storm cloud. The truth is, he's afraid. Afraid of what she'll say. Afraid of what this will mean for their future. Afraid of the anger that still simmers in his chest. So he types back, "I'll be home in an hour." The house is eerily quiet when Jake returns. It's the kind of silence that feels unnatural, like the calm before a storm. Emily's car is parked in the driveway, but there's no sign of her inside. He stands in the doorway for a moment, wondering if she's gone or if she's just waiting for him. Then he hears the faint sound of footsteps coming from upstairs. Emily. She's here waiting. Jake braces himself as he walks up the stairs to their bedroom, his heart hammering in his chest. The weight of the confrontation is palpable. When he enters the room, Emily is sitting on the edge of their bed, her posture stiff, like she's ready for battle. But there's something different about her. She's not angry. She's not defensive. There's a vulnerability in her eyes that he hasn't seen in years. Maybe it's guilt, or maybe it's fear. "Jake," Emily says softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to handle things. I didn't know what to do." Jake crosses his arms over his chest, his jaw clenched. He's trying to keep his emotions in check. But it's hard. So hard. "You didn't know what to do?" he repeats, his voice rising. "You thought cheating on me with some guy was the solution?" Emily flinches at his words, but she doesn't look away. She meets his gaze, her eyes searching his face, pleading for understanding. I know it was wrong. I made a huge mistake. But Jake, it's not what you think. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Jake takes a deep breath, trying to keep his anger in check. He needs the truth, the whole truth. And this time, he's not backing down. "Then tell me," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "Tell me everything. Who is he? How long has this been going on?" Emily's eyes flicker with hesitation, and for a moment, Jake wonders if she's going to back out of the conversation altogether. But then she lets out a sigh, her shoulders sagging as if the weight of her secret is too much to bear. "His name is Chris," Emily says, her voice barely audible. "He's someone I met through work. It started innocently enough, just lunch meetings, you know? But then things got complicated." Jake's heart drops. Chris. This guy was a part of Emily's life, someone she was supposed to trust. And he'd been more than just a coworker. He'd been her escape. "You've been seeing him behind my back for how long, Emily?" Jake demands, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Emily closes her eyes, as if the truth is too painful to say aloud. "About 6 months," she admits, her voice cracking. "It started with small things, flirting, talking about our personal lives, but then it got deeper. I didn't know how to stop it, Jake. I didn't know how to tell you, and I was scared. I was scared of losing you, but I was also scared of being alone." Jake feels like the floor is falling out from under him. 6 months? 6 months of betrayal, of secrets. He's been living in the same house with her, completely unaware, while she's been carrying on a relationship with someone else. The silence in the room is suffocating. Jake feels his chest tighten, his hands balling into fists at his sides. How could she do this to him? After everything they've been through, after all the years they've spent building their life together, how could she tear it all down so easily? "I thought you loved me," Jake says, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I thought we were happy. But clearly I was wrong. Emily shakes her head, tears welling in her eyes. Jake, I do love you. I've always loved you. But I was lost. I didn't know how to talk to you. I didn't know how to tell you that I was unhappy. Jake laughs bitterly, shaking his head. Unhappy? With me? With us? I didn't want to hurt you, Emily says quickly, her voice desperate. I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought I could fix it on my own. But I made a mistake, Jake. I made a terrible mistake. The room is thick with the tension of their words, and Jake can't breathe. His head is spinning, his emotions spiraling out of control. He wants to scream, to shout at her, to make her feel the pain she's caused. But instead, he just stands there, frozen, trying to process everything. This is the moment where everything changes. But even as Jake stands there, trying to make sense of Emily's words, he feels something inside him begin to shift. The anger, the pain, the betrayal. It's all still there, but there's something else too. Something he can't quite put his finger on. I don't know if I can forgive you for this, Emily, he finally says, his voice quieter now, but full of finality. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. Emily's face crumples, and the tears spill over. Jake, please don't say that. Please don't. But Jake isn't listening anymore. He's too far gone. Too deep into the hurt to turn back. I need space, he says, his voice firm. I need time to think about all of this. I can't do this right now. He turns and walks out of the room, leaving Emily sitting on the edge of their bed, broken. And with that, Jake's world begins to unravel even further. He has no idea where this will go, no idea how it will end, but he knows one thing for sure. Things will never be the same. He goes through the motions, teaching his classes, grading papers, but he can't focus. Every moment feels like a battle, and the weight of the situation is constantly on his mind. He's drowning in his own thoughts, trying to process everything that's happened, trying to figure out what's next. But as the days drag on, the reality of his situation starts to set in. His marriage is falling apart, and no matter how much he wishes he could turn back time, there's no going back. Emily's betrayal has torn through everything he thought he knew about their life together. And then, as if it wasn't enough, Emily shows up at his work one afternoon, looking like she hasn't slept in days. She's standing in the doorway of his classroom, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. Jake, please, she says, her voice trembling. I know I don't deserve this, but I need to talk. I need to fix this. Jake's heart is in his throat as he stands there, staring at her. He doesn't know if he can handle more of her lies, more of her promises. But part of him wants to believe her. Part of him still wants to fix what's broken. But is it even possible to fix this? The days after the confrontation feel like they're stretching into infinity for Jake. Each moment spent with Emily feels like a battle. She's sorry, she says. She wants to make things right, she says. But Jake can't shake the image of her with Chris, the man she's been hiding from him for months. The man who was a part of their lives, lurking in the background, while Jake was none the wiser. It's like a wound that won't stop bleeding, no matter how hard he tries to ignore it. The tension is thick between them, thick as smoke in a house that's burning down. Emily tries to make small talk, tries to act like things can just return to normal. But Jake can't do that. He can't act like he didn't just catch her in the act of betraying everything they'd built. Every attempt at normalcy feels forced, like a veneer slapped over the cracks in their relationship. And Jake knows it won't be enough to fix what's broken. He wakes up each morning to the same gnawing emptiness in his chest. The kind of emptiness that comes when you realize you've been living in a lie for too long. He used to get excited to come home from work, to see Emily's face waiting for him at the door. But now, every step he takes towards the front door feels like walking into a house of mirrors, where every reflection is a version of the truth he doesn't want to face. And then, one night, it all boils over. It's a Friday evening when everything comes to a head. Jake is sitting on the couch, scrolling mindlessly through his phone, his mind 1,000 miles away from the screen in front of him. Emily is in the kitchen, her presence just as distant as it's been for weeks now. They're both there, physically but emotionally, They're light years apart. The silence between them is suffocating. It's the kind of silence that comes after the storm, the kind where you don't know if you're supposed to pick up the pieces or leave them broken. Jake knows he can't keep pretending that everything's fine. Sooner or later, he has to face the truth. He has to face the fact that their marriage is shattered beyond repair. The doorbell rings. Jake glances at Emily, who looks up from her spot at the counter. She raises an eyebrow, unsure of who it could be. He doesn't know either, but something in the back of his mind tells him that whatever's about to happen will change everything. He opens the door. Standing there is Adam, Jake's old college buddy, the man who showed him the video, the man who, despite his good intentions, has unwittingly dragged him deeper into this mess. "Hey man," Adam says, his voice quiet but full of urgency. "We need to talk." Jake's stomach tightens. The last thing he wants is to keep dredging up the painful truths that are already gnawing at him. But Adam doesn't give him a choice. "Come in," Jake says, his voice flat, and steps aside to let him in. As soon as Adam sits down across from Jake, it's clear that this isn't just a friendly chat. Jake can feel the tension radiating off his old friend, the kind of tension that comes when there's something big hanging in the air. Something that needs to be said but isn't quite ready to be spoken. "So," Adam begins, "I've been talking to Chris." Jake's heart skips a beat. Chris, the man who had been sharing Emily's bed, the man who had stolen her from him, even if just for a moment. He can feel his pulse quicken as the anger rises again, bubbling up from deep within him. "You've been talking to him?" Jake repeats, his voice colder than he intended. "What about?" "Look, man," Adam says, "I didn't want to get involved, but after what happened between you and Emily, I couldn't just sit back anymore. Chris isn't who you think he is." Jake freezes. "What are you talking about?" "He's been messing with my wife for months. I know exactly who he is." Adam shakes his head. "No, you don't. He's got a past, Jake. A past he's been hiding from everyone, especially Emily." Jake feels a pit form in his stomach. "What kind of past?" Adam hesitates. "It's not just an affair. It's more than that. And if I'm being honest with you, I think he might have been using Emily all along." The words hit Jake like a punch to the gut. "What the hell are you talking about?" His voice rises now, a mix of confusion and anger. "Why are you telling me this now?" Adam sighs, running his hand through his hair. "Because it's not just about Emily anymore. It's about you too. You've been played, Jake. And it's time you knew the full story." The room is silent for a moment, the weight of Adam's words hanging heavily between them. Jake's mind races as he processes the information. Could it be possible? Could Emily have been manipulated by Chris all this time? Could she have been so blind to his intentions that she didn't even realize she was being used? "I've been looking into him," Adam continues, his voice urgent. "Chris is involved in some shady stuff. I don't know all the details, but I know enough to say this. He's not the guy Emily thinks he is. And he's been lying to her, just like he lied to you." Jake feels the world tilt beneath him. Everything he thought he knew about this situation, everything he thought he understood about Emily and Chris, is now in question. This isn't just an affair. This is something far more dangerous. "I need to know everything," Jake says, his voice hardening. "Everything you've found out." Adam nods, his expression grim. "I'll tell you what I know, but you need to be ready for what comes next." The next few days feel like they're moving in slow motion. Jake can't stop thinking about Adam's words. The idea that Chris was using Emily, that he had an agenda beyond just an affair, fills Jake's mind with dread. He spent the last few years thinking he knew everything about his marriage. But now he doesn't know who to trust anymore. And Emily? She's still apologizing, still begging for his forgiveness. But Jake isn't sure if he even wants her back anymore. Not after everything that's happened. Not after learning that the affair might have been more than just a betrayal. It might have been a manipulation. But what Jake doesn't know yet is that Emily is hiding something else. Something even bigger than the affair. That's when Jake makes a decision. He can't keep living in this limbo. He can't keep second-guessing himself, wondering whether he should stay or leave. He needs answers, and he needs them now. So he tells Emily he wants to meet. He needs to hear the truth, the whole truth. No more lies, no more half-truths. I'm done, Jake says, his voice steady, but full of resolve. I need to know everything. I need to know why you did what you did, and what Chris has really been up to. Emily looks at him, her face filled with guilt and regret. Jake, please. I didn't want any of this to happen. But Jake doesn't flinch. He's done with excuses. It's time for the truth. Jake is sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone. He knows what he needs to do. Emily is downstairs, giving him space, but the tension in the house is unbearable. It's like everything he thought he knew about his life has been shattered into pieces. And now, as he stares at the screen in front of him, he knows he can't keep pretending. He can't keep lying to himself, thinking this marriage can still be saved. He types out the message. We need to talk. Now. It's simple, but Jake feels the weight of the words as soon as they're sent. It's not just about the affair anymore. It's about everything, the lies, the deception, the way things have changed. The truth has to come out. He has to know what he's dealing with, whether he likes it or not. After hitting send, Jake takes a deep breath and walks downstairs. Emily is sitting on the couch, her hands clenched in her lap, her eyes red. She's been crying again. But Jake knows this isn't the time for sympathy. Not anymore. He spent too long hiding from the truth. Now it's time to face it head-on. You wanted to talk? Jake says, his voice quiet but firm. He's done with playing games. He's done with pretending. Emily looks up, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and fear. Jake, please. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. She starts, but Jake cuts her off before she can continue. I don't want excuses, Emily. I want answers. I want to know everything. I want to know why you did this to me, to us. The silence between them stretches, and for a moment, it feels like the world is holding its breath. Emily doesn't respond right away. She just stares at the floor, like she's trying to figure out how to say the words that she knows will destroy what's left of their relationship. Finally, she looks up at him. Jake. I didn't mean to fall in love with him. It just happened. The words hang in the air, thick with the weight of betrayal. Jake feels his chest tighten as he processes what she just said. Fall in love? This wasn't just an affair. Then, it wasn't just a one-time mistake. She's been in love with this guy, with Chris. For how long? How long? Jake demands, his voice sharp. How long has this been going on? Emily swallows hard, clearly struggling with the truth. About 8 months. But it wasn't like that at first. We were just friends. We talked about work, about life, and then one night we just kissed. And then things escalated. Jake's world tilts on its axis. 8 months. For 8 months she's been having an affair. And not just any affair. This was something deeper, something more than just physical. She'd been in love with him. I don't know how it happened, Jake. I never planned it. I thought it was just a phase, that I could fix it. But then I couldn't stop. It just happened. Jake's hands are shaking now, his knuckles white as he grips the back of the chair. This is the breaking point. This is the moment where everything changes, where the facade of their life together falls apart. Don't you dare tell me this was just some mistake, Emily, Jake says, his voice cold, his anger simmering just below the surface. You've been lying to me for months. You've been lying to me, and I've been living in this fantasy world where everything was fine. But it wasn't. It wasn't at all. I'm sorry, Jake. Emily whispers, her voice breaking. I never meant to hurt you. I don't want your apologies. Jake snaps. I want the truth. What was he to you? A mistake? A fling? Or was he really something more? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like he was everything. Emily recoils as if his words are a slap to the face. She opens her mouth to speak, but no words come out. Jake takes a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He's so angry, so hurt, but there's a part of him that still wants to believe her. He wants to believe that she didn't mean to hurt him. But the truth is right in front of him, and he can't ignore it anymore. I don't know if I can do this, Jake says, his voice low, almost to himself. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Emily reaches out, but Jake steps back. He can't let her touch him right now. He can't let her get close. Not until he knows if he can find a way to forgive her. And right now, that seems impossible. You need to leave, Jake says, his voice firm. I need space. I need to figure this out. Jake. Emily starts, but Jake raises his hand, silencing her. No, you need to leave. I need time to think. It's the first night Jake spends alone in the house since all of this began. The emptiness is suffocating. The silence feels heavier than ever, and he can't escape the thoughts swirling in his head. Emily's words replay in his mind. Her confession, her tears, her guilt. She's sorry. She didn't mean to fall in love with him. But none of that changes what happened. None of it changes the fact that she betrayed him in the worst way possible. Jake spends the night pacing the house, unable to sleep. He's too restless, too wound up in his own thoughts. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know if he can fix this, or if it's even worth trying. But then, as the early morning light begins to filter through the blinds, Jake's phone buzzes. It's a message from Adam. I've got more info on Chris. He's not who he says he is. Jake feels a jolt of urgency in his chest. His mind races as he reads the message. More info? What could it possibly be? He immediately calls Adam. Adam, what the hell is going on? What do you mean by more info on Chris? Adam's voice comes through, tense and hurried. Listen, Jake. I didn't want to get you involved in this, but I've been doing some digging. Chris has a criminal record. He's been involved in some shady business. And I think he's been using Emily. I don't know if she even realizes it, but he's playing her. Jake feels his heart skip a beat. A criminal record? Emily's been involved with someone like that? The realization hits him like a ton of bricks. This isn't just an affair. This is something deeper, something more dangerous. And Chris? He's been manipulating Emily all along. I need to know everything, Adam, Jake says, his voice full of urgency. Every detail. Everything you've found out about him. I'll send you everything I have, Adam replies. But be careful, man. This isn't something you want to get tangled up in. Jake feels his stomach churn as he hangs up the phone. He doesn't know if he's ready for what's coming. But he knows one thing for sure. This isn't just about Emily anymore. This is about something much bigger, and it's all going to come crashing down. The message from Adam hits Jake like a punch in the gut. Chris has a criminal record. He's been involved in shady business. I think he's been using Emily. I'll send you everything I have. Jake reads those words over and over again. A criminal record? Shady business? The man Emily had fallen in love with, the one who had torn their life apart, wasn't just some guy from her work, he was a criminal. And Emily, blind with her own desires, had gotten involved with him. Jake can't wrap his mind around it. The anger that had simmered beneath the surface since Emily's confession now boils over. His fists clench at his sides. His thoughts race. Emily didn't know. She couldn't have known, right? She'd never tell him if she did. But there's no way he can just sit back now. Not after this. He grabs his phone and quickly dials Adam. The phone rings a few times before Adam picks up. Jake, listen. I'm sorry I didn't tell you this earlier. I didn't want to drag you deeper into this. But it's bad. Real bad. Adam says, his voice tense. Just tell me everything. Jake interrupts, his voice sharp with urgency. I need to know. I've been going through Chris's records. Adam continues. He's got a few arrests under his belt. Nothing too serious, but enough to raise some red flags. But here's the real kicker. He's involved in some underground real estate deals. I'm talking about money laundering, Jake. The whole thing stinks. Jake's mind is reeling. Real estate deals? Money laundering? He tries to process the information, but it feels like his world is spinning. Emily had no idea what she'd gotten herself into, and now it's not just an affair. It's a criminal conspiracy that could put them both in danger. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Jake asks, his voice shaking with anger and frustration. Adam sighs. I didn't have the full picture until now. I didn't want to throw you into this without knowing more. But I've got some more info I'll send over, trust me. Just be careful. Jake hangs up, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. He knows what he has to do next. This isn't just about confronting Emily anymore. This is about protecting himself, protecting his family, and figuring out how deep Chris's web of lies really goes. The next day feels like it drags on forever. Jake can't focus on anything. Every conversation, every interaction feels like it's happening in slow motion. His mind is fixed on the bombshell Adam dropped. Chris, the man who Emily had betrayed him with, was tangled up in something much darker than just an affair. And now Jake doesn't know who to trust anymore. That afternoon, Emily returns home after her meetings, her presence feeling like an elephant in the room. She's standing in the hallway, looking like she's about to speak, but Jake doesn't give her the chance. His mind is made up. "We need to talk," Jake says, his voice flat, controlled. "Jake, please." Emily begins, but he cuts her off. "No, I don't want any more excuses, Emily. I need the truth. The whole truth." Emily's face pales, but she knows this conversation is coming. She doesn't resist. She simply nods, as if resigned to the inevitable. "Everything. Now," Jake demands. Emily swallows hard, taking a deep breath. "I don't know everything about Chris. I didn't know about the criminal stuff. He made me feel alive again. He made me feel like I mattered." Her voice cracks, and Jake sees the tears welling up in her eyes, but it doesn't matter. Not right now. He's past the point of caring about her tears. He's past the point of caring about anything except finding out just how deep this goes. "He's been using you," Jake says, his voice low and cold. "You don't even know what he's been involved in, do you?" Emily's expression falters, a flicker of realization crossing her face. "What are you talking about?" Jake takes a deep breath, trying to steady himself. This isn't easy. This isn't something he ever thought he'd be doing. But Emily needs to understand the gravity of what she's been a part of. "He's involved in money laundering, Emily. He's been using you to get to me, to get close to you. It's not just an affair. He's been using you as a pawn in some criminal scheme." Emily stares at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. No, that can't be true. You're lying." "I'm not lying," Jake says, his voice hard. "I don't care if you believe me or not. The truth is, you've been taken for a fool. And so have I." The silence between them is suffocating. Jake watches as Emily's face crumples, her expression full of confusion, fear, and guilt. She doesn't know what to say. She doesn't know how to fix this. Jake can feel his chest tightening. He's trying to hold it together, trying to keep his emotions in check. But it's getting harder. Emily's betrayal cuts deeper than he ever thought possible. The woman he loved, the woman he built his life with, had been living a lie. And now, their lives were in danger, all because of her mistakes. "I didn't know, Jake," she whispers. "I swear, I didn't know." Jake shakes his head, the hurt evident in his eyes. "It doesn't matter anymore, Emily. I don't think I can ever trust you again. I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen," she says, her voice trembling. "Please, just let me fix this. Let me make it right." Jake laughs bitterly, his anger flaring once again. "You can't fix this. You can't fix what's been broken. It's over." That night, Jake makes another call. He can't handle this alone. The walls are closing in and he needs answers. He needs a plan. He dials Adam's number, his fingers trembling as he waits for him to pick up. "Adam, it's bad. It's worse than I thought. She didn't know about the criminal stuff. She didn't know he was using her." Jake pauses, trying to calm his racing thoughts. "But now I need to know what to do. What do I do next?" Adam's voice comes through, steady but still concerned. "Jake, you've got to protect yourself. Get ahead of this. If Chris is involved in something that dangerous, he won't hesitate to come after you. I don't know what he's capable of, but I know he's not the kind of guy who takes no for an answer." Jake feels the weight of Adam's words. The tension in his shoulders mounts. What's left to do? What does he even want anymore? His whole life, his whole world, is crumbling before him. Just keep your head on straight. Get your finances in order, protect your assets, Adam advises. And be careful, Jake. You're walking into something you don't fully understand. The next day, Jake makes the hardest decision of his life. He knows what he needs to do. He's been avoiding it, putting it off for as long as possible, but there's no more running. He files for divorce. Not because he doesn't care, but because the woman he thought he knew is gone. She betrayed him in ways he can't even begin to comprehend. But as he walks out of the lawyer's office, papers in hand, ready to face whatever comes next, he feels something shift inside of him. He's still angry. He's still heartbroken. But there's also a sense of clarity. He's no longer the man caught in a web of lies. He's free. The final papers have been signed. The ink is barely dry on the divorce agreement, but Jake can already feel the weight lifting from his shoulders. He doesn't feel happy, not exactly, but he feels something close to relief. The constant tension, the anger, the betrayal, all of it has finally been put to rest. The storm is over, even if the wreckage still lingers. The final confrontation with Emily had been inevitable. Jake had expected it to be worse. There had been a part of him that thought maybe Emily would fight for him, that she would somehow explain away the affair, make it all make sense. But in the end, Emily had been more broken than he could have imagined. She had apologized 100 times over, but it wasn't the apology he needed. It was the truth, and he had gotten that. Chris had been manipulating her. He had used her as a pawn in something much bigger, something much darker. Jake had wanted answers, but Emily's guilt was suffocating. She couldn't defend herself anymore. It was over. It was clear, even to her, that their marriage couldn't survive this. "I'm so sorry, Jake," she had said, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know. I was blind, and I didn't see it until it was too late." But Jake didn't want her pity. He didn't want her sorrow. He wanted his life back, even if that meant walking away from the person he had once loved. The decision was clear. He had to cut the ties, no matter how painful. It wasn't just about the affair anymore, it was about self-respect. It was about taking control of his own life again. "I can't do this anymore," Jake had told her, his voice steady but final. "I'm done, Emily." In the weeks that followed, Jake slowly found his way back to himself. The first few days were the hardest. Every corner of the house seemed to remind him of the life he had lost, the years he had spent believing in a lie. But as time passed, he began to reclaim his space. He started doing things for himself again, things he had put aside for far too long. He took up fishing again, something he had loved to do before life got so complicated. He spent more time with his friends, went out to dinner, and laughed until his stomach hurt. He even found himself spending hours at the gym, working out the stress and anger that had built up over the past few months. But more than anything, Jake started to learn how to be alone. Not lonely, but alone. He learned that he didn't need someone else to complete him, to make him feel whole. He had his own life to live, and for the first time in a long time, he realized that was enough. As for Emily, the story wasn't as clear-cut. She had apologized, yes, but she hadn't fully understood the consequences of her actions until the divorce had been finalized. She was left to pick up the pieces of her life, and Jake had to wonder if, deep down, she truly realized just how much she had lost. There were moments, however, when he couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. Emily wasn't a villain. She wasn't evil. She had just been blinded by her own desires, caught in a web she never intended to get caught in. Still, Jake couldn't go back. He couldn't undo what had been done. In the end, Emily moved to a new city, far away from the life she and Jake had shared. She tried to rebuild, to start fresh, but Jake knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy for her. It wasn't easy for him either, but he had learned one thing over the past few months. Life goes on, and while the past may never fully fade, it doesn't have to define the future. Chris, on the other hand, faced his own consequences. Jake never did find out the full extent of Chris's criminal activities. But one thing was clear: Chris wasn't going to get away with it. After Adam's investigation into Chris's real estate dealings and money laundering, it didn't take long for law enforcement to get involved. Jake never felt the need to go public with what he knew, but Chris wasn't so lucky. Word spread, and with it came the consequences of his actions. By the time the investigation reached its peak, Chris had been arrested, charged with several counts of fraud, and linked to a network of illegal dealings. He was taken down, not by Jake's hand, but by the very things he had been trying to hide. The betrayal, it seemed, had been mutual. Months later, Jake was sitting in his backyard, watching the sun set over the trees. His mind was quieter now. The anger, the heartache, had faded into something he could live with. He had learned so much from this experience, much more than he ever thought he would. He had learned about trust, betrayal, and the fragility of love. But most of all, he had learned about himself. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, Jake took a deep breath, letting the cool evening air fill his lungs. There was peace in this moment, a peace he hadn't known in a long time. He wasn't fully healed, not yet, but he was getting there, and that was enough for now. Jake's phone buzzed, breaking his moment of reflection. It was a message from Adam. "Just wanted to check in on you. How's everything?" Jake smiled softly, tapping out his reply. "Better. Slowly, but I'm getting there. Thanks for having my back through all this." Adam's reply came almost instantly. "Anytime, man. You're stronger than you think. You'll be fine." Jake sat back in his chair, staring up at the sky. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he had control over his own life again. He wasn't waiting for anyone to fix things for him. He wasn't waiting for Emily to apologize or for Chris to be held accountable. He had moved past all of that. The future was his to shape, and for once, he wasn't afraid of what came next. The end of one chapter only marked the beginning of another. And so, the story came to a close. Jake had faced the darkest part of his life. He had been betrayed, humiliated, and left to pick up the pieces of his shattered world. But through it all, he had emerged stronger. He had learned that he didn't need anyone to complete him, that he could find happiness within himself, even in the most broken of times. The past was something to learn from, not something to live in. Jake had learned that, and as he looked ahead, he could finally see a future that didn't revolve around Emily, Chris, or anyone else. It was his future, and it was up to him to make it the best one yet. If you've enjoyed Jake's journey, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with friends, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Life can be full of unexpected twists, and we're here to tell them, one story at a time. Thanks for watching.